In a shocking moment on live television, California Governor Gavin Newsom attacks President Trump, calling him a dictator who loses again. But seconds later, Vice President J.D. Vance fires back with explosive revelations about Newsom's $30 billion high-speed rail disaster. What happens next leaves the studio audience gasping and Newsom scrambling for answers he doesn't have. The MSNBC studio lights blazed bright as Governor Gavin Newsom leaned into the camera, his trademark hair perfectly styled, his smile dripping with confidence. "Donald Trump loses again," he declared triumphantly. The host nodded approvingly as Newsom continued his assault. "The courts agree. His militarization of our streets and use of the military against U.S. citizens is illegal." He posted the same message on X, believing he'd landed a knockout blow. The audience in the studio erupted in applause. Newsom's eyes gleamed with ambition. He saw 2028 on the horizon, and attacking Trump seemed like the perfect strategy. But what he didn't notice was Vice President J.D. Vance seated just feet away, quietly adjusting his microphone. The calm before the storm was about to shatter. Vance's expression remained composed, but those who knew him recognized the look. He was about to unleash something devastating, and Governor Newsom had no idea what was coming. The confrontation that followed would become one of the most brutal political takedowns in television history. Newsom continued his attack, gesturing dramatically. "This president thinks he's above the law," he said, voice rising. "He thinks he can turn our military against our own citizens. That's not leadership, that's dictatorship." The MSNBC host leaned forward eagerly. "Governor, you've been very vocal about opposing President Trump's policies. Some say you're positioning yourself for 2028. Newsom's smile widened. "I'm focused on protecting democracy," he replied smoothly. "Someone has to stand up to authoritarianism." The studio audience clapped again. Liberal Twitter was already buzzing with clips. Newsom felt the momentum building. This was his moment to shine on national television. He adjusted his tie, preparing for another soundbite. "California shows what real leadership looks like," he boasted. "We're building the future while Trump tears down democracy." But then J.D. Vance slowly raised his hand. The gesture was subtle, but it commanded attention. The host noticed immediately. "Vice President Vance, you'd like to respond?" The studio fell silent. Something in Vance's demeanor had shifted. This wasn't going to be a typical political sparring match. This was going to be something else entirely. J.D. Vance's voice cut through the studio with surgical precision. "Governor Newsom," he began calmly, "you want to talk about dictatorship? Let's talk about the $130 billion you've stolen from California taxpayers." Gasps rippled through the audience. Newsom's smile faltered for just a moment. "That's a ridiculous accusation," he shot back. But Vance was just getting started. "The high-speed rail project." Vance continued, his voice steady as steel. "Voters approved it in 2008 for $33 billion. You've turned it into a $130 billion disaster. Where did that money go, Governor?" The camera caught Newsom's jaw tightening. "Infrastructure projects have cost overruns," he deflected. "That's normal." Vance leaned forward slightly. "Normal? Is it normal that not a single mile of high-speed rail is operational after 16 years? The audience began murmuring. Even the friendly MSNBC crowd seemed unsettled. "Is it normal?" Vance pressed on that you own a $13 million mansion on a $250,000 salary. Newsom's face flushed. "My family has investments." "Stop," Vance interrupted firmly. "Let's talk about those investments." The studio atmosphere had completely transformed. What started as Newsom's victory lap was turning into an interrogation, and J.D. Vance was just warming up. The revelations about to come would shake California politics to its core. Vance pulled out a folder, placing it deliberately on the desk. "I have documents here," he said, tapping the folder. "Financial records showing systematic fraud in California's infrastructure projects." Newsom tried to interject. "This is conspiracy theory nonsense." "Is it?" Vance cut him off. "Then explain why city sewage projects in Los Angeles show 400% cost overruns. Explain why garbage collection contracts in San Francisco mysteriously triple in price. Explain why every single infrastructure estimate in California ends up wildly inflated." The audience had gone completely silent. Cameras zoomed in on Newsom's increasingly uncomfortable expression. "These are complex urban projects," Newsom stammered. "California has unique challenges." Vance's eyes narrowed. Unique challenges or unique opportunities to siphon money. He opened the folder, revealing document after document. Contractors connected to your campaign donors. Shell companies receiving billions in state funds. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Newsom's hands gripped the armrest of his chair. You can't prove any of this, he said. But his voice lacked conviction. Vance looked directly into the camera. The American people deserve to know where $97 billion in excess spending went. They deserve to know why California's governor lives like a king while homeless camps fill his streets. The studio erupted in shocked whispers. Even the host seemed stunned, unsure how to regain control. But J.D. Vance wasn't finished. The real bombshell was yet to come. Let me paint a picture for you, Vance said, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. A governor approves a $33 billion project. That project balloons to $130 billion. Meanwhile, that same governor acquires property after property, mansion after mansion, all while claiming to fight for the working class. Newsom's knuckles had turned white. My financial disclosures are public, he protested weakly. Vance smiled grimly. Your official disclosures? Yes, but what about the LLCs? What about the trusts? What about the donations that mysteriously appear in offshore accounts? The camera operator seemed to sense the moment, slowly zooming in on Newsom's face. Beads of sweat had formed on his forehead. His perfect hair suddenly looked less perfect. You're making wild accusations without evidence, Newsom said. Vance lifted a single document from the folder. This is a whistleblower report from inside the California High-Speed Rail Authority. It details systematic inflation of project costs. It shows money being diverted to contractors who don't exist. It reveals a pattern of fraud that goes to the very top. Gasps echoed through the studio. Newsom's aide off camera was frantically gesturing, trying to signal him, but there was no way to run. The trap had been sprung. You called President Trump, sensing the historic nature of what was unfolding. $97 billion, Vance repeated. That's not a cost overrun. That's not a mistake. That's theft on a scale that should shock every American. He looked back at Newsom. You want to talk about courts ruling against President Trump? Let's talk about the courts that will be ruling on your fraud. Let's talk about the investigations that are coming. Let's talk about justice for California. Newsom's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The man who had entered the studio to destroy Trump had been destroyed himself, and the destruction was far from over. Here's what kills me, Vance said, his voice filling with genuine emotion. Cal families are living in cars. Veterans are sleeping on sidewalks. Children are going hungry. And you stole their hope. You stole their future. You stole $97 billion that could have transformed their lives. Tears were now visible in multiple audience members' eyes. The weight of the betrayal was sinking in. But you didn't just steal money, Vance continued. You stole trust. You made them believe in something. A high-speed rail that would create jobs, connect communities, build dreams. Instead, you built mansions. Newsom finally found his voice, though it was weak. The project faced unexpected challenges. Stop lying, Vance said firmly. Just stop. Every contractor who received money knew there would be no rail. Every inflated invoice was intentional. Every diverted dollar was planned. He held up another document. This is an email from your Deputy Director of Transportation. Quote, the governor wants another 15% added to estimates. Standard procedure for the special fund. What special fund, Governor? Muham's face had gone completely white. His political instincts were screaming at him to respond, but he had nothing. The evidence was overwhelming. You know what the saddest part is? Vance asked. Californians are good people. They believed in you. They trusted you with their dreams. And you sold those dreams for beach houses and wine estates. The studio was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning. Every person present understood they were witnessing a political execution. So please, Vance said, his voice hardening. Keep calling President Trump a dictator. Keep posting on X about him losing because every time you do, more people will ask questions. Questions like, how does a public servant afford a $13 million mansion? Questions like, where did $97 billion really go? Questions like, who's the real criminal here? Newsom's hands were shaking visibly now. The cameras caught every tremor, every bead of sweat, every moment of his collapse. The courts you celebrate, Vance added, they'll be busy. With you soon enough. The FBI you claim supports your view of Trump, they'll be knocking on your door. The justice you pretend to champion, it's coming for you. The host finally attempted to interject. We should note these are allegations. Vance turned to her. Allegations backed by documents, by whistleblowers, by bank records, by a pattern so clear a child could see it. He looked back at Newsom. Deny it. I dare you. Look into that camera and tell California you didn't steal their money. Tell them those mansions were bought with honest money. Tell them the rail will be built. Tell them you didn't betray them. Newsom's lips moved, but no sound emerged. The silence was deafening. That's what I thought, Vance said quietly. The devastation was complete. Nwomi had walked into the studio planning to damage Trump. Instead, his own crimes had been exposed for all to see. And the worst part, everything Vance said was true. The audience sat in stunned silence as Vance gathered his documents. You want to know what leadership looks like? He asked. It's President Trump fighting for American workers. It's putting criminals in jail, not in mansions. It's building walls to protect our people, not stealing money meant for rails. He stood up slowly. Governor Nwomi, you called the president a dictator. But dictators don't face elections. They don't submit to court rulings. They don't serve the people. You know what dictators do? They enrich themselves at the people's expense. They silence opposition. They corrupt the system. Sound familiar? Nwomi sat frozen, his political career in ruins. The people of California deserve justice. Vance concluded. And justice is coming. Count on it. As Vance prepared to leave, he delivered one final blow. Oh, and Governor, that $130 billion that could have ended homelessness in California. That could have rebuilt every school. That could have saved lives. Instead, it bought you mansions. History will remember that. California will remember that. And in 2028, they'll remember who really stood for them. The studio remained silent as Vance walked off. Newsom sat alone, destroyed on national television. His dreams of the presidency shattered. His corruption exposed. His lies unraveled. The host struggled to find words. Well, we will be right back after this break. But everyone knew what they had just witnessed. The political assassination of Gavin Newsom and the birth of a movement for justice in California. Across the state, phones began ringing. Citizens demanded investigations. Prosecutors took notes. The FBI prepared files. The $130 billion question was no longer whether the rail would be built. It was whether Newsom would face justice for stealing it. As the cameras faded to commercial, one image remained burned in viewers' minds. Gavin Newsom, the walled president, sitting in silence, his empire of lies crumbling around him, while J.D. Vance walked away with the truth. And the truth, as they say, always wins. In living rooms across California, families watched in shock. The high-speed rail they had voted for, hoped for, paid for. It was never coming. Their money had been stolen. Their trust betrayed. Their future sold for mansions and wine estates. Social media exploded within seconds. Newsom fraud began trending. Clips of Vance's revelations went viral. The documents he referenced were screenshot and shared millions of times. California legislators' phones rang off the hook. We want our money back. Investigate Newsom now. How did this happen? The voices of angry citizens demanding answers. Meanwhile, in Sacramento, emergency meetings were called. Newsom's staff scrambled to respond. But what could they say? The evidence was damning. The theft was real. The governor was corrupt. Back in the studio, Newsom remained seated, a broken man. His aide finally convinced him to leave during the commercial break. But the damage was done. His political career was over. His presidential dreams were dead. His legacy would be theft and betrayal. As he stumbled out of the studio, protesters had already begun gathering outside. Where's our money, Gavin? Jail for Newsom. California deserves better. The chants grew louder. The movement had begun. Justice was coming. J.D. Vance, meanwhile, was already on the phone with federal prosecutors. Yes, I have all the documents. Yes, there's more evidence. Yes, this goes all the way to the top. The wheels of justice were turning. And for the first time in years, Californians had hope. Hope that their money might be recovered. Hope that the corrupt would be punished. Hope that their state could be saved. The next morning, newspapers across the nation carried the same headline. Vance exposes Newsom's $130 billion fraud. Editorial boards demanded investigations. Politicians distanced themselves from Newsom. The Democratic Party went into crisis mode. How would they let this happen? How had they supported such corruption? How would they recover? But for ordinary Americans, the message was clear. The swamp wasn't just in Washington. It was in Sacramento. It was in every state house where politicians enriched themselves. It was wherever taxpayer money disappeared into offshore accounts. And J.D. Vance had shown them how to fight back with truth, with evidence, with courage. As the sun rose over California, change was in the air. Federal investigators prepared subpoenas. Forensic accountants sharpened their pencils. Prosecutors reviewed the evidence. The house of cards was falling. And Gavin Newsom, he sat in one of his many mansions, watching his empire crumble. The phone rang constantly. Lawyers, advisors, panicked donors. But he knew the truth. Vance had him dead to rights. The evidence was overwhelming. Prison was a real possibility. He had attacked Trump as a dictator. But in the end, he was exposed as the real criminal, the real threat to democracy, the real enemy of the people. And as California woke up to the truth, one thing became crystal clear. J.D. Vance hadn't just defended President Trump. He had defended every taxpayer who had been robbed, every family who had been betrayed, every Californian who deserved better. The battle for California's soul had begun. And thanks to one devastating moment on live TV, the good guys were finally winning. My fellow Americans, if this story opened your eyes, don't remain silent. Hit the like button immediately. Share this video with every Californian who needs to know the truth. Leave your comments below. Tell us your thoughts on this massive fraud. Subscribe to our channel for more explosive revelations. Patriots, join our channel membership today and become a guardian of truth. Get exclusive access to uncensored videos they don't want you to see. Earn your digital badge of honor and unlock the hidden stories mainstream media buries. Together, we're not just subscribers. We're the new American revolution fighting for transparency, one exposed truth at a time. Justice is coming and you can be part of it. God bless you and God bless America.